Hello there guys and welcome back to my channel, GusTeasPlants. Today I'm going to be doing my April TBR and also sharing the books that I finished on March. I consider myself an average book reader. I'm not the one reading 10-12 books a month. However, I do read like about a book a week or maybe sometimes 2 books a week. So yeah, if you're interested in my books I read in March and my up and coming April TBR, keep on watching. So March for me was a really productive month. I got through 7 books, 5 that I finished and 2 that I DNF'd. And so let's begin with the books that I did not finish that I do not recommend. So the first book that I did not finish was Gothicana. Gothicana is a dark romance, gothic. The first 6 chapters, the first half of the book was really interesting. I liked the concept, the paranormal, the ghost, the story, the flow was very interesting. However, there were a few tweaks here and there that could have been fixed, that didn't get fixed and got progressively worse as I kept on reading the book, to the fact that I DNF'd it. It had too much sex going on in the book that was kind of uncalled for. I really did not like it. For example, there was a sentence there, a paragraph where it pretty much he filled her up with his cum and she walked down the hallway to her classroom. I don't want to be reading a book that says things like that. Another thing was she was talking to him. She was sharing her information about her mom being crazy and having, difficulties growing up while he was eating her out. It really doesn't make sense and it didn't really add it up to the story. It was just too much at once and I just couldn't finish it and I didn't like it. If you like those type of smutty books, then Gothicana is for you. It does have a little bit of like darkness and like paranormal activity and like there's a lot of trigger warnings, self-inflicting damage, and it's just a lot going on and I don't think it's a book that I want to read or that I want to recommend. However, if you're interested, alright guys, the second book that I could not finish was Where the Dark Stands Still. This was a YA fantasy folklore with polished folklore, and honestly, I didn't like it. However, before what made me buy the book and get the book was that it was, to me, reading the synopsis and the cover, it gave me like House Moving Castle, Studio Ghibli vibes, Arietti from Studio Ghibli. It just had all the positivity, energy, but when I read it, it was a lot going on. It just had so many things happening at once that I couldn't really follow the story. Tree talking and witches and apples and kids and breaking glasses. It was just a lot happening at once, and maybe it's just I'm not a good reader for that type of book. To me, it just was a lot happening at once, a little bit of like claustrophobic, and I just couldn't deal with it. I DNF'd it in 20%. I only got to like the first 11 chapters and I stopped. I recommend the book because it did have a 4-star rating on Goodreads. If you're interested in that type of book, I guess go ahead and pick it up. I didn't like it and it wasn't for me. Moving to the books that I did finish, that I did like, and that I do recommend, I'm gonna begin with a Spanish book. I speak Spanish, my first language. And the first book that I finished was Arizona in Love by Carmen M. Darie. So here is the book. This is a book by a YouTuber. She is here on YouTube. She makes blogs. She's from Spain, living in Mexico, and she just blogs her day-to-day life. And it's kind of like a rom-com. You have the main character, I forgot her name. You have the main character here. She's in a Mustang from her dad, and then she's driving to Arizona from Utah, and her car breaks down in the middle of the road. It's kind of like she's in the middle of nowhere, and lo and behold, there is like a car shop nearby, and an auto parts nearby. She takes her car over there, and she falls in love with a guy at first sight. They become enemies at the beginning, and it's kind of like enemies to lovers type of thing. It was a good read. I give it a 3 out of 5 star. But if you like this type of rom-coms, then go ahead and pick it up. It's Spanish and it's not in English yet, but yeah, 3 out of 5 star. I also picked up Annie Bot. This was an amazing book. I give it a 4-star rating out of 5. This is a very easy to read 236 page book, really quick read. I finished it in 2 days. This book follows the story of Doug, which is just a regular guy that happens to purchase a Alexa, which is an AI robot that looks like a human, and turns out that the robot develops human feelings and starts to question Doug, and then they fall in love with each other, and it's just a really interesting book. It's a sci-fi book with a little bit of romance in it. The ending of the book was really nice. I really liked the ending, and that's why I gave it a 4-star rating. But it was really quick book read. I recommend this book to everyone, and I'm not into sci-fi books, but this one was really, really nice. I really like it, so highly recommend. Annie Bot by Sierra Greer. Another good book that I read this month is a thriller, and I wasn't gonna read thrillers this month. However, here it is. This is by Simone James. It's my first book that I read by her, and I kind of want to read more because this was a really good book. It was like a 4.5-star rating. Paranormal, ghost, and that's something that I absolutely love. This book, I believe, is set up in the 1980s, 1990s. You follow a newlywed couple that are going for their honeymoon, and as they're heading over to I forgot where they were going. The point is that they find this young hitchhiker in the middle of the road at 3 a.m. in the morning. It's a girl, and she is like bleeding, and so they take her in the car to save her. They take her to the hospital where she dies, and then the cops come over, and these couple are now they happen to be the first suspects of her death, and you pretty much follow the story of why people die in that specific area, because people have been gone missing, have been coming out dead for the last 30 years, and so you kind of follow the story as to the what's killing the person. And it's a paranormal activity, paranormal ghost, mystery, thriller. Absolutely love it. Quick read as well. I believe it's barely 300 pages, and I absolutely love it. So highly recommend this book. I want to say this is my favorite book of the month of March, and this is The Scarlet Veil. This was such a phenomenal book. I loved it. This is by Shelby Mahurin. I think I'm saying her name correctly, but this is a really interesting book. It's enemies to lovers, I think, vampires, gothic romance, blood. However, unlike Gothicana, this does not have a lot of sex, and it actually doesn't have any sex at all, which I love it. I'm not gonna mention a lot of the story because I kind of want to do a review on this book, but if you like vampires, if you like blood, if you like romance, but like not so much sex, this is a really good book. A lot of books nowadays are including a lot of like smutty, slutty scenes because that seems to be popular nowadays with readers. I'm not one of them. In this book, it's for me because it doesn't have those, adult scenes, and I really like that. It's a very interesting book. The only negative that I have here is that it's a very chunky book. It's like around 600 pages, and I feel that it could actually be condensed to like 400 pages because there's a lot of extra stuff in the book. But I like that, so I like the book. It's really, really fun. Alright guys, and the last book that I read this month, it's actually a reread. This was Lisa Jewell's None of This Is True. This was, I give this book a 4.5-star rating. I read it again because it was a finalist on Book of the Month's Lolly finalist, and I believe it got second place. It's a really fun book. It's a podcast thriller, and I've never read anything like this. It's my first book, and that's why I loved it so much. It was very mysterious, intriguing. I wanted to find out what was happening in the story. You have an unreliable main character, and it's just so packed with a lot of interesting ideas and concepts, and I absolutely loved it. This was probably my second favorite book, along with The Scarlet Veil. But along with The Scarlet Veil, this was one of my favorite books of the month. I absolutely loved it. So now let's talk about the books that I want to read on April. This is my April TBR. So beginning with my book of that I received on the Once Upon a Book Club. This is A Tempest of Tea. Look at the cover. You guys know I love drinking tea. So this is a book about tea. So you follow the story here. The main character is Arthur. I believe she's a 14-year-old girl that works in a regular tea house in England. It's a regular tea shop, regular tea house during the day that turns into a blood house for vampires at night that is led by this bad guy. And you follow the story of Arthur, the main character, that has like a crew of other guys that work with her to infiltrate and form a heist to kind of get the dirty dishes out and the dirty gossip out of the bad guy from the vampires. And it sounds like a very fun story. It is sitting at a 3.8 star rating on Goodreads, and for me that's a really good book. For me that's a really good star rating for this book, for a book. And so I am super excited to read this book. And you guys can see I have all the little bookmarks that I acquire with the book of the Once Upon a Book Club. Super interesting book, and I absolutely cannot wait to read this book. I think it's gonna be my first book that I read this month. Guys, the second book that I'm gonna be adding to my TBR is this beauty right here, which is The Measure. This is by Nikki Ehrlich. This is from Target. I bought this in Target. When I read the synopsis, guys, on this book, I was bamboozled. Let me tell you guys a little bit about the book and why I added it to my TBR. Let me read to you guys the blurb on this book. Phenomenal. You wake up, pour a cup of coffee, and head out. But today, when you open up your front door, waiting for you is a small wooden box. This box holds your fate, the exact numbers of years you will live. From suburban doorsteps to desert tents, every person on every continent receives the same box. In an instant, the world is thrust into a collective frenzy. Where did these boxes come from? What do they mean? Is there truth on what they promise? As society comes together and pulls apart, everyone faces the same shocking choice. Do they wish to know how long they will live? And if so, what will they do with that knowledge? So guys, does that not sound incredible? You follow the story of 8 different characters in this book that happen to open the box and wish to discover how many years they have before they die. And so you pretty much are reading the bucket list of all of those 8 individuals that happen to open the box. And this book follows different chapters with different names, and that kind of correlates with the person that you're reading. You're getting 8 different points of views as you're reading this book. I'm in it. I believe I will put this as a literary fiction, fantasy, and sci-fi all in one. Amazing book. Does that not sound amazing? Alright guys, and the other 3 books that I don't have here with me are gonna be from subscription boxes. The first one will be from Fairy Loot, and I believe that book will be A Feather So Black. I believe that's also gonna be a gothic romance. I don't really know the premise of the book, but I am waiting to receive that box, and that'll be part of my April TBR. The other book that I'm gonna add to my TBR is Frederick Backman's This Is Anxious People. Now, Frederick Backman is actually my favorite author of all time. I've read like around 6 of his books. I've watched his movies, and they're just amazing. This book, I'm at 50% of this book, but this is a book that I kind of read here and there. I don't really read this book and bitch on it. It's a book that I can read in between other books, but I plan on finally finishing this book. But it's like a very comedy and a little bit of like literary fiction all in one. You follow the story of different little points of views, and there's a bank robbery, there's a guy that commits suicide. You kind of follow the story amongst the people that were nearby when everything happened, and 2 cops that are kind of, dumb, and then you have a psychologist that's also a little bit stupid. It's a really fun book though, and I believe they made this into a movie in Scotland or Sweden. IKEA, the store, comes out a lot in this book. It's a really fun book to read, and I actually will probably finish it tomorrow. It's just, I'm like at 50% there. I'm like at 200 pages in, and I believe it only has 300, so that's that. I'm also waiting for my Owl Crate young adult book. I don't really know what the book will be, but I definitely will be adding that book to my April TBR. Hopefully I get it with time and I'm able to finish it. And that's pretty much it. I will be reading a lot of books on April. for me. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys find it helpful. And yeah, so I'll see you guys next time. Kapag arigato. Gozaimashita.